Sammy, how's it going?
Good. I'm just adjusting the audio. You know the routine.
Oh, of course, my friend.
Yeah.
Really happy that you reached out, man. And it's awesome that you got to see the film on the big screen. That's amazing.
I really like Blood in the Snow. Like it's like I find that Blood in the Snow and Toronto After Dark are two of our Toronto film festivals that like have a lot of really cool genre movies, some horror, some weird sci-fi, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are always treats when those two festivals come around. Yo, welcome to My Summer Lair. I'm your host, Sammy. I'm grateful you're joining the program, Younan. You may know my guest, Peter Remoliotis, aka Petey Beats. He is the main host and the face of Popternative, an entertainment, pop culture, and sports media outlet that was founded in 2015. Although Petey kind of feels like it was really 2020 when things started to take off. You'll hear more about that in just a little bit. On Popternative, you'll see Petey Beats interview and talk to many of the actors in your favorite streamer shows, like the cast from the MGM horror TV series to Outer Banks and so much more. There's a refreshing passion and an infectious passion that colors Petey's interviews. And that, to me, is one of the distinct reasons why Popternative has found so much success. As you'll hear, Petey's especially captivated by craft. When he talks to actors or other filmmakers, that's what he's digging into. That's why he brings a shovel to the interview. The analogy I used in this episode is he wants to know how a magician pulled off a magic trick. When he sits down with actors like Ali Wong or Luke Wilson, he wants to understand, how did this movie or how did this TV show, how did this happen? When you see a magician perform a magic trick, instantly your brain starts coming up with scenarios. There's a magnet, his right hand is fake. Something to explain what you've just witnessed for Petey is talking craft with many of his guests. A great interviewer will listen, which is not the same thing as hearing. Petey has clearly been listening to his guests reflect and discuss craft, as now he's been branching out to becoming a filmmaker. Yeah, this is so cool. Via Popternative Pictures, he's the producer of In Flight, a full-length feature film. And for this My Summer Lair episode, he's one of the writers behind Adjoining, an unsettling, creepy horror short set in a motel. Oh, yo. The TV guide description says, a couple's motel stay takes a chilling turn when they discover they're being observed, leading to unexpected consequences. You know when you stay in some motels and they have that adjoining door to the next room, and most times, you never know who's in that room? Oh, yes. If you don't want to ever think about the bed sheets in a motel room, you definitely don't want to consider who is next door through that small, thin, adjoining door. And you don't want to consider if you're being watched. Adjoining smoothly blends horror elements with social media commentary. It makes it an ideal short for Blood in the Snow, an annual horror, genre, and underground cinema film festival. It's one of Toronto's best film festivals. If you ever have a chance, go and attend the screenings, and the crowds are fantastic. There are lots of enthusiasm. Continuing that thread of enthusiasm, Petey and I explore his passions as host of Popternative and now as a filmmaker. He's also a big hockey fan and he's into music. If this is the first time you're meeting Petey Beats, his nickname, Petey Beats, his musical genre will surprise you. I think it will. Stick around for that. This was a super fun conversation. As Petey is interested in talking to his guests about craft, I was fascinated about his craft, how he interviews his guests, and who he is. Which I guess is starting to sound like the levels within levels in Inception. Really, we just turned on the mics and we had a good time. Now, adjoining me is Stephanie with the classic introduction.
Sound, the final frontier. My Summer Lair is an enterprise, a pop culture voyage with a continuing mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new creators and celebrate established producers, to boldly go where no podcast has gone before. And now here is your host, Sammy Younan.
How was your experience for Blood in the Snow? This time you're a filmmaker.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. Usually I'm on like the media side of things when it comes to, film festivals and releases of films. And I think I really got a taste of that other side of things at we had our big premiere at Screamfest at the Chinese theaters in Los Angeles in October.
Yeah, how cool
So
was that?
it was a dream, man. It's really cool. You make these films, you have these ideas, you film them, you edit them, you submit it, it's out of your hands, and then boom, you get to, be in an amazing place, an iconic place like, the TCL Chinese theaters,
Mm-hmm.
and essentially get people to see your, work on a big scale level. It's amazing. And what's really cool about Blood in the Snow is, if you talk to my whole team as well, specifically our directors Harrison Hood and Dakota Dolby, uh, Blood in the Snow was one we really wanted as well. Like when we were talking about like the festival circuits and schedules, like we really wanted Screamfest, we really wanted Vancouver Horror Show, and we really wanted Blood in the Snow. Those were like a part of our top five, and we got those. So it's like it was just really cool. And it was like it showed that people really loved our movie and loved our vision, and it's so cool that we got to kind of disseminate it at all these festivals.
Where are you on the pop culture spectrum? Are you like a horror guy, a sci-fi nerd? Like, because you obviously do a lot of work in Popternative. So, but for you personally, where are you on this at the pop culture spectrum?
That's a great question. I'm all over the map, but I love my horror movies, Sammy. I really do. I just love. I'm a big fan of genre bending and throwing something at the wall and sees what sticks essentially. And I think the genre of horror is really doing that these days. And I feel like there's different ways to scare people. There's the psychological game. There's you don't need to kind of rely just on blood and gore, although there's a lot of that and a lot of really big ones. I mean, In a Violent Nature is a film that was filmed, outside of Toronto area and in Ontario, right? That was one that, had a really cool, they had a panel at Blood in the Snow, at Deadly Exposure, the conference about that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that had a lot of gore, but again, that was gore with just a very unique concept, right? Of a film that's following from the footsteps, the perspective of the killer walking in the woods, right? So that's why right now on like, in terms of what I love to watch, what I love to kind of create, I just love that it's just such a fun sandbox to play in with all these different ways to kind of get reactions out of people. Like people are scary, you know what I mean? Like certain things, right? Like, so that's what I love about it. But I'm all over the map. I'm a big comedy guy. My top 10 movies of all time, 4 or 5 of them are probably comedies, if I'm going to be honest with you.
Which
so
are
it's
like,
just kind
can you list a couple of them?
School of Rock, Napoleon Dynamite, Super Bad. Those are like in my top 5 for sure.
That's a lot of
And
sarcasm
then,
in those three.
oh my, it's just one of those. They're movies that just like you don't get tired of them. Like
Mhm.
I don't know if you have any of those films. Like I don't get tired of those movies. Some people might, but I don't get tired of them.
Yeah, and not just horror too, but like you're also part of the Frumily.
Yes.
From season 3 just wrapped up. You and I have both talked to Ricky He, who plays Kenny. You've had a number of other cast members. Like they're all really enjoying this experience. When you talk to them, they are enjoying this. Like it's a weird horror show. It's mainly horror, but there might be elements of sci-fi. It's hard to read it. You know what I mean? From is like a great example of what you're talking about.
It is, and I think that's why it's one of the greatest shows on television right now. I've said this again, and I've said this so many times, and I've gone on. It's that show that's really picking up steam, isn't it, Sammy? Like people are really like when people are finding out about it, they're like loving it. They're all in.
Yeah, and it's almost like it's kind of like Lost again, right? Where people have those theories and they're trying to unpack things and what do you think this means? And it's like, is Julie a time traveler? And like these kind of things, and they're going back and forth, right? Ricky, when I talked to him, he was saying like the cast has gotten to this point now where they're kind of zen. The mystery will reveal itself, right? So as they get these scripts, they're just like, well, we'll just wait and see how much we get with every script.
I actually just talked to Hannah Sheremy, who plays Julie, about the finale. I was in Toronto for Blood in the Snow while I filmed it, so that's why I was in a hotel room. I didn't have my usual setup. If you see the interview, but yeah, I was just kind of like asking her about, that reaction, like the whole. I mean, spoiler alert for people who haven't seen the finale of season 3, but like, like she came from another dimension. She has a different haircut. She has scratches on her face. Like what's that like reading that? Because I'm a big believer. Like, one of the things I love about doing interviews is, and I really really focus on this with Popternative, is I'm a big fan of the craft, and I love to hear reactions and how things were made and the conversations that kind of led to what we saw on screen. Because a lot of people, there's a lot of like character development and a lot of plot questions that, a lot of people do reviews, you can read about it, but I really like kind of focusing on the craft and how it happened and what led to those kind of like decisions we see on screen. So my questions are really about that. So I really ask my guests about like that script to screen journey, like reading something, and then after all the conversations with the writers, directors, and producers, what's it like seeing kind of that final product from that script to the screen? So I talk to the From cast about that all the time, and I love having those interviews with them specifically.
So sticking with From for a little bit, like how much of Popternative is based on your taste? You said you like Napoleon Dynamite, you like From, you're a horror guy. So how much of Popternative is based on your taste in terms of like what you choose to reach out to? Like if there's a new movie or new TV show coming out, how much of it?
That's a really good question. I think it's sometimes I think there's some shows that I'm someone that always watches stuff, and I watch stuff of so many different genres as well. So most of the things that you see us do interviews for are things that I watch and I'm a fan of. So that's the aspect of it. But it also is something that, when we post news about certain shows, people seem to kind of enjoy that news. Or when we get an opportunity to do an interview with a show that, we weren't that familiar with, people really like it and ask us for more interviews. So it's a combination of both things, I would say, where we get kind of sometimes requests or people seem to like certain shows that do really well. For example, Heartland on CBC does very well with our audience. People seem to love our Heartland. I've interviewed Amber Marshall over 4 times. People love those conversations. And it's one of those things too. Like I said, Heartland isn't kind of the horror movies, the super bad horror.
Yeah, I've seen Heartland. Yeah. A lot of horses.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just kind of like, we want to cover everything. Popternative is a global media outlet. We want to cover everything. We want to cover things, shows and TV and movies from all around the world. We had a really big run last year this time with La Sociedad de la Nieve, the Society of the Snow, on Netflix. We spoke to a lot of South American actors about that movie. Some we did in Spanish, some we did in English. We've done interviews for, Swedish shows on Netflix. We've done, we've talked to Lee Min-ho about Pachinko, the Korean drama on Apple TV Plus. So we really try to do that as well, because I love the fact that we're able to kind of like talk and give kind of exposure to so much content from all around the world. And we even have Betsa Beduque, who is our Popternative en Español correspondent, who does Spanish language interviews for our channel as well, which is really cool.
That's one of the things I like about streaming, is it's given us a lot more access to this international work. You know what I mean? Dark on Netflix is a great example, right? Like, I would have never thought about a German sci-fi show with time traveling, things like that. Into the Night is another, like, kind of Belgium, kind of got a mix, some Turkish stuff in there as well. Like, you would have never had access to this stuff, quote unquote, in the old days, right? With just the 4 or 5 channels. But now, like you said, you're getting Spanish and Mexican and like all kinds of shows from all around the world.
Absolutely. Ragnarok, the Norwegian show, was a really good one that I loved watching. There was a Danish show called Elves that I think was really, really cool. I don't know if you ever saw that one.
No, I haven't seen
that kind of. It's really cool. It's on Netflix, and it kind of has a Christmas holiday theme to it as well. It's a really good one. I really like it. I think it's a mini series. I think there's 1 season, but it's really good. But yeah, though that's kind of how it is. And this all started from just like starting a podcast and just talking to people, and then it just kind of, the pandemic hit, and I started getting interviews with cast of shows on Netflix like Outer Banks, and it just started to kind of explode. And people were like, watching Outer Banks at home, watching my interviews. So my channel in 4 or 5 months during the pandemic, like quadrupled in views. and I started getting more opportunities, and I started reaching out more. And then I said, this is a media outlet. This is a brand. And every year it just kind of started to do cooler things and bigger things. And now, of course, Popternative Pictures, we're making films now. We're producing films. So the brand just keeps kind of getting bigger, and we're really excited about the future.
Before we stick to the future, I wanna stay with the how it started. So you've got an interest in sports, which is mostly hockey, and you have an obvious interest in pop culture. So when you were a little kid, what came first for you? Was it the interest in hockey, or was it the pop culture?
Oh, it's interesting. I think they came at the same time, to be honest with you, because what ended up happening was I was a big fan of hockey, and I was, watching hockey, and I was always into the business of hockey. I'd get all the year in reviews and the hockey preview magazines, and I have my highlighter, and I highlight the players I liked and everything, and I wanted to watch for the radar. So I always liked that. But my father, before he went into medicine, because he's a doctor, was in the music industry and was a music producer and everything. So I was really exposed
That's a weird
to
career to jump from music producer to like.
It's a really cool story.
Yeah.
He ended up, it was a professional drummer when he was, 16, 17. And started, producing records and working with, I had like a record label that had Sony BMG distribution, the only one in Quebec at the time. So he was doing that. So I was exposed to a lot of music, but again, he would go to like these, he was also always involved with the entertainment industry. So we would be going to movies a lot. And he would anything that kind of had to do with productions, right? Even though it was music production. But so I was kind of at an early age, I was really kind of exposed to a lot of really cool movies, sports. So it was like a mix of it. And I had kind of like stages in my life where like I got really into bands and I was like a concert promoter. So then I got really into music for a little bit, and I was still a fan of sports, but music was like my big passion. Then it was, getting a job in sports, working in social media and like in hockey. Then it was like sports again was a main thing. You know what I mean? And focusing on digital media. And I wrote for Sports Illustrated as well, had some NHL articles. But now it's like film and pop culture, Popternative. So it kind of goes in waves, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah. So when you're little and you're into hockey, like what era are we talking about? Which players were your favorite? Like when you got the hockey cards and you're like, I got to get this guy.
So I grew up in Montreal, Quebec. So I grew up watching a lot of Montreal Canadian games, like Habs games. So actually, one of my favorite player was a defenseman named Sheldon Souray. He was actually my favorite player. But I also love Joe Sakic, Peter Forsberg, Marcus Naslund, Jaromir Jagr. Those were the players I really, really enjoyed. I was also really into the Ottawa Senators as well. Yeah, Jagr keeps going. I loved Martin Havlat and Daniel Alfredson of the Ottawa Senators as well, Mike Fisher. But it was interesting because I was just always like a fan of hockey, and I just loved watching a lot of different teams, and I would had opportunities where I was able to go to games, and like when we would go on vacation, I would watch games, like go to Florida Panthers games. You know what I mean? I remember one game seeing Florida play Washington Capitals. Was one of Ovechkin's, it was Ovechkin's rookie season, so I got to see him live. Like it was just things like that, right? So that's kind of the era. But like Sheldon Souray, who I've interviewed on Popternative, so that was pretty cool. Like I ended up interviewing him on my show, and like before it started, being like, "You were one of my favorite players growing up," and he was just like, "Cool, excited for the interview." And then we just get into it. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. Do you ever find that when you do the interviews, and sometimes you connect with a guest really well, and it's like you almost become friends? I remember Howard Stern was talking about interviewing Conan O'Brien, and after the interview was done and Conan left the studio, whatever, Howard Stern was reflecting about it on the air, and he said, "You know what? I think Conan and I just became friends. Like Conan gave him his number." You know what I mean? Like it's a weird way to make friends, if that makes sense.
You're onto something. I have made films with people I met through interviewing them on Popternative. So, for example, with Adjoining, which you saw, Blood in the Snow, that was a film. I worked on a film in the Toronto area, a short film that I made, and one of my friends, who's an actor and producer, Sydney Scotia, she was I worked on that film with her, and I interviewed her on Popternative for like a couple years ago. That's how I met her for the first time. for a film that she did with Kevin Dillon called Frank and Penelope and Sean Patrick Flannery. So I did like an interview, and then we were both creating things, and we ended up doing a short film together. And she actually connected me with the directors of Adjoining because she's friends with Harrison, one of the directors. So we ended up making Adjoining. And then when we were doing casting for Adjoining, I reached out to Brenna D'Amico, who's our lead, who plays Millie, because I interviewed her for things, and she was in like the Descendants films. So like my filmmaking career, started by kind of collaborating with Popternative guests.
Are you weirded out by this process, or is this, I guess, just all fun?
It's awesome. I think it's really cool. And I think it just shows that there's this kind of opportunity to, like you just want to collab with people that want to make something really cool, really special, get it out to the world. But most importantly, you want to work with really kind people. And I think that's the most important thing as well. And I've always wanted to do what I'm doing right now. Like I always saw that it was going to kind of evolve into, film production. And that's what's kind of happening right now. And it's a really exciting thing. But yes, to your kind of thing about, becoming like friends and colleagues with past guests, that's happening in a like creative capacity right now with past Popternative guests, which is really cool.
Yeah, because I've had the same thing too. Like, especially when you meet a guest for the first time, there is kind of like a first date element to these interviews, right? Where you're kind of feeling each other out and like you're seeing vibe, and maybe they feel safe enough to tell you a story or two, or a secret maybe. And so when you hit it off with somebody, you're like, oh, that was really cool. I enjoyed that person's company.
And it also, I think it's really interesting too, because there's different kind of like formats of content these days too, right? Like there's the long form, and then there's the junket where you're in there with them for like 5 minutes. You can ask a couple questions, and then, the next person goes in. So I think it's also like, there's a lot of different like types of styles of interviews too, right? Like yours is like a podcast, right? But there's some situations where you might have longer episodes. So there might be more opportunities to ask questions about like the creative process, and like you said, like what do you like besides filmmaking, what are your hobbies? But sometimes there might not be as much time too, right? Which is interesting.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, there's two types of, I guess, interviewers, right? I mentioned already Howard Stern, and he worked on Private Parts, so he made a movie. He's worked in television, so when he talks to a guest, like a film person or an actor, like he knows what it's like to work with an AD and things like that. He knows what it's like to be on set. And then say somebody like a Terry Gross, who's on NPR Fresh Air, she's never made a movie. So, but she's also really good still at like talking to guests. But those are the two types, the ones who have the experience and the ones who don't. And you are obviously making stuff. So does making movies help you connect or even relate to your guests?
I think it does. I think people have told me, when I've asked them a certain question, that they're like, wow, like I could tell you have made stuff or are interested in making things, because it's kind of like very like, craft storytelling kind of driven questions about making things and the final edit, because there's always like, the three kind of steps and journeys of making something, right? There's the thing you write, the thing you shoot, and the thing you film, and the thing that you edit, right? And if two of those are kind of the same, so when you start kind of talking about that stuff and like you shoot the breeze with your guests, there is that kind of, like you said, like there's that familiarity, and there's that like, oh, like it sounds like we're both on the same page because we both made things, or like we want to make things. So I agree with you 100%. It kind of definitely helps. But it's also kind of like what you said in the beginning, which I really liked, is I'm really interested in that. Like I'm interested, even if I didn't, like even before I started my filmmaking career, I was interested in like, how did you make this? Like what was like 4 conversations like that led to that shot we see on screen, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like none of this happens by accident, right? Like you said, somebody's making choices, especially when you talk to an actor. There's a number of different ways to read a line or to deliver a line. Right, so you want to know, like, how did you know that was the way that to go with this, right? Like, you're almost like talking to a magician. Where did you put the card? How did you make the card disappear? Was it behind your ear? Was it up your sleeve? Like, you want to know.
And it's interesting too because Michael Schur, who has an incredible TV show right now on Netflix, A Man on the Inside with Ted Danson. If your viewers want to look for a new comedy to watch, to binge on Netflix, it's incredible, really good watch. I remember talking to him because he got a special award at the Austin Film Festival a couple years ago, and we had a conversation like this, like we're having, and it was really cool because it felt like a masterclass a little bit because we were talking about script writing and screenwriting, because that's a big thing too, is like, how do you start script writing and how do you start, right? And he was kind of going over things like, find scripts of shows or movies you really like, study them like a textbook. So it was like really cool to kind of have that back and forth with that whole, like, where like you're interviewing and like you're learning at the same time as well. And my viewers get to learn and kind of see that as well, and listen to kind of insightful conversations. And, we pay attention at Popternative. We will see like comments, like people will say like, I really love the craft questions, or I really love the insight. And it was kind of like what you said about like, how I determine who I interview and everything, right? It has to do with like, listening. People are like, I would love to hear, the cast. You have those questions with this cast, this Netflix cast, you know what I mean? So we do our best to kind of get that as well. So I think it's really interesting because I'm always learning on interviews. I don't know if you feel the same way. I'm always learning. It's really cool.
It is really cool. And you also just make connections too, right? Like, because you sometimes are also, when you interview somebody, you're also partly a therapist, right? So you're like wondering about some of the psychology of certain things, certain decisions, like, did that influence your relationship with your dad? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, so you throw certain things out, and it's interesting to hear how people like, kind of when you're creating something, and this too as a person who creates stuff, you're using everything, right? Everything gets influenced, right? For your relationships, something you see at the art gallery, maybe a Simpsons bit, like you're using everything. You're using the whole cow in a sense, right? So it's trying to unpack that as an interviewer can be daunting because there's a lot of threads sometimes depending on the topic and the actor who's open and willing to talk about those things.
Absolutely. I actually, I know you invited me to have a break of asking the questions, which is very generous of you, but I actually have a question for you, actually.
Yeah.
Do you find, because things naturally, like your My Summer Lair, like your show, you've been doing for quite some time right now. And, there's going to be, like I said, there's going to be, certain, guests that you're going to have on, and you're going to go where your interests, and you're going to go where the opportunities are. But I'm wondering, do you find a lot of things in terms of evolution and the, growth of your podcast and everything? Does it just kind of like naturally happen, or is this something that you premeditate and you plan and say that, okay, this year I need to change a few things? Or does it just kind of like one day happen, just you want to maybe change a thumbnail around and like you want to change a certain thing? Because I find that very interesting. There's a lot of things that have happened with Popternative, they just happened. Like there hasn't been that much kind of planning, you know what I mean?
Yeah, the answer is both, because one of the things is like when you start off doing this, and this too, like you said, I think Popternative started in 2015, right?
Yeah.
So this too, when you start at the beginning, generally people don't know who you are. So if they're tuning in, it's because you have a certain guest, right? So one of my earlier episodes that did really well, I got George Strombolopoulos, right? So a lot of people know Strombo, they like my music and stuff like that, so they tuned in. And somebody left a comment at that episode, and he's like, I don't know who this dude is, referring to me as the interviewer. He's like, I don't know who this dude is, but he's killing it, right? Like, so that's the thing where like you start off and you're not really known, so people are only tuning in for the guest. But as you were talking about, like when you start having those conversations, you can kind of connect with people and open up, and like they can see a different side. Then it starts to shift. And that's the thing where like you got to figure out the things that you're good at, right? You're focused on asking about craft. You want to know the process. You want to know how the magician did the trick. And so
100%.
For me, just always being curious, and just like I want to know too, like not just craft, but also just like your passion and like why somebody should like, you know what I mean? Because we have so many choices now. Like what's a good reason to watch from? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
You could watch Supernatural. You could watch other things. why should you watch From? And so
yeah, like why exactly? Why From? Exactly. Yeah. Like, oh, From is so good. Why? Why is it so good? Right.
so
So there's so many answers to that question.
Right. And that's to me is what I want to do is when I bring a guest on now, I want to highlight why From is good. And so hopefully then kind of serve. I like recommending and I like connecting people. I like being a human Tinder for pop culture, right? Where you can kind of connect people with like, this is a cool show. And as you said, From is blowing up now, right? More and more people. That first season was a little under the radar. Second season is starting to bubble up. And now 3, a lot more people are on board. So that kind of answers your question. It's like, that's where I come from. It's like, I want to be able to recommend something that's super cool and super dope and make your life better.
And it's interesting. We did Popternative as like a thing started in 2015. It was like my podcast. And like early on, it was like panels too. And like it was a lot of sports and pop culture panels as well. But I would say it really started as like a media outlet with the website, the reviews, the, interviews and everything. And the junket interviews, like 2020. Like I'd say is when that kind of officially, it was like a media outlet. You know what I mean? Before that, it was like a podcast. But it was like, so we're heading to like I'd say like kind of like our official, like our unofficial like 5-year anniversary of it being like a media outlet, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Are you gonna have a party and some cake or something for the?
I don't know. We're really excited. I don't know. It's just exciting to just see every year. We get just always really cool opportunities, and it seems to get bigger and bigger, and we're really excited for the future. And I think the big thing is Popternative Pictures slate. Like we have 5 films. We have 3 feature films and 2 short films under our belt as a film production company, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
So that's like really cool that we're really excited about right now. And it's like balancing the media outlet stuff, the interview stuff, but also the producer stuff has been really, really exciting as well, to be honest with you.
Yeah, so circling back to Adjoining, which is what started this whole conversation, like, the story came from you. So how would you describe Adjoining?
Yeah, so Adjoining is a, creepy motel short horror film that I came up with the idea at Virginia Beach. I was on vacation with my family, and I was doing beach runs past all of these motels. So it just started like me thinking about Bates Motel and Vacancy with Luke Wilson. I just always thought that's just a creepy setting for a horror film, a motel.
See, that's what I'm saying. You use everything, right? Like you're on vacation and like you think of Bates Motel.
So there was that. And then the combination of we had an adjoining room when we were at Virginia Beach.
Wow. Okay. And you didn't know who people in the other room?
Exactly. Like it was just kind of one of those. No, like, so it was like this idea of like motel adjoining. So I put together this story of, the hotel, manager, the motel manager, played by Sid Noel, who did an incredible job in the film, with Chloe. And, a couple comes into the motel late at night to check in. And there's like, voyeurism, she's watching the guests that stay there essentially. And I thought that was like a really kind of like creepy premise. And, we use kind of like on the poster, like mind your business and like, you never know who's watching essentially. So things like that. And then some really crazy things happen. And it's really kind of gets very, a lot of people have said it makes them like, I mean, you've seen it, right? It's kind of intense sometimes.
Yeah. It's that Will Ferrell line from Anchorman. Well, that escalated quickly.
Yeah. No, I think it. So yeah. So I came up with a kind of the idea of the story, and then Dakota and Harrison, who directed the film, we developed it a little bit more, and then we filmed it in North Hollywood, and we had Brenna D'Amico, who people know from the Descendants film. She was also producer on the film. She was incredible to work with. She's amazing. And she brought on Carter Glade from Blumhouse's Freaky with Vince Vaughn and Catherine Newton. So and we had Sid Noel, and we had, Andy Chen from Cinepack Studios where we filmed it. He was our director of photography, and he had some amazing, shorts online. He had one short. I don't know if you saw this, Sammy. I don't know if you saw the spider with Chandler Riggs from The Walking Dead, where it was like a Peter
no.
Parker Spider-Man horror movie short.
I know the one you're talking about. I haven't seen it though. Yeah, yeah.
And it's on YouTube and, has millions of views. So Andy was the, director, writer of that one. And he was our DP on Adjoining. So we had a really amazing team.
He
We
did
had
a great job.
Like,
it's a really creepy atmosphere, like kind of shadows and dark and like, so the DP did a great job.
Oh, he did an amazing job. And I think it's very interesting because one thing that I really loved about Adjoining was everybody was on the same page to just make to have a good time and to make a really good, fun, short horror film. And that was like, as soon as we got there, that was the goal. And that's kind of where that mission was accomplished because we were really excited with what it looked like. And, we started showing it to a few people even before we got into festivals. And then we got into Scream Fest like in the summer, super early, and we were like, that was the one we really wanted. So it's just a really cool, exciting. It's been a cool, exciting journey. We've been in, so far. The film has been into 8 film festivals, and we're hoping it gets into more.
And this is another thing, kind of carrying on that thread of what you and I are talking about with you doing Popternative and me doing My Summer Lair, is you start something and then you don't know where it's gonna go. You know what I mean? Like. I have a steady flow of traffic from Australia. People like listen to me in Australia, and I'm like, I don't mention Australia. I guess I did now, but I generally don't mention Australia. I don't really have a lot of Australian filmmakers or anything like that. So I'm like, I don't know what you people are Googling or where you're coming from, but I'm grateful you're here. I'm thankful. But that's the thing. So when you make something like this and you throw it out there, it'll take you to some really cool and unusual places.
Absolutely. We just had, while we were at Blood in the Snow, we also had our international premiere at the Soho Horror Film Festival in Brixton, England, which was in the UK, which was really, really cool too. So we had an opportunity to screen there, part of their opening gala with the film Who's Watching. That was there as well. And it's been really cool that Adjoining, because you know how it is with horror films, with shorts, there's different ways they could program. We've been programmed with other shorts, but we've also had the privilege of being played before and after really, really cool feature films as well. So at Blood in the Snow, we were before Pins and Needles with Chelsea Clark. And we were at Screamfest with Scared Shitless as well, which is another amazing, Canadian film that was also at Blood in the Snow.
I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was so much fun, right?
Yeah, and it's got the old school kind of Sam Raimi kind of campy vibe to it, like Bruce Campbell.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That one's a lot of fun. But with Adjoining, though, you have some, again, because the story came from you, there's some commentary on social media and surveillance, as you already mentioned, some voyeurism.
Oh boy, are we getting into spoilers right now for the first time? Is that what we're
I'm
doing?
not going to necessarily do a spoiler, but I did notice there is some commentary in social media and surveillance. Yes. Like from you, obviously, because you're active in the social media circle, is that something based on your experiences? Is that you see the quote unquote the dark side or the underbelly of social media, or where's that coming from?
That's a really good question. I think it was kind of more how this conversation started, just watching films that kind of reminded you of that a little bit. Like I remember, watching Unfriended. Remember those movies? Do you remember Unfriended? Yeah, and it was like a Skype call.
Yeah,
and there was like things like that. And then they also made Unfriended Dark Web.
Yeah,
so it was like
all
watching
like
a lot of
desktop
those films.
kind of like horror film.
Exactly, but then also kind of like watching that, and then going on this really terrifying journey of Googling like the dark web, right? And
it's called the dark web for a reason.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And just even not even dialing in, just like just putting dark web, going to the Wikipedia page, and you're just like, Wikipedia is terrifying me right now. Just Wikipedia. You know what I mean? So it's just so it was more kind of yes, I think it was more the obviously, social media is something that we're, constantly kind of aware of, and there's a lot of kind of changes about it. But I think, to be honest with you, it was more kind of playing into things based on other things I've seen that I really was like, wow, that's crazy social commentary, and that's really creepy. You know what I mean? I mentioned Vacancy as well. Luke Wilson, have you seen that film?
Yeah. I know that one.
Yeah. So, I just chatted with Luke Wilson recently as well. And I got to tell him that I have a short film that was Vacancy was used kind of as research a little bit, and that was really cool. He was like, "Wow, that's amazing! I just watched Vacancy the other night because I love that movie. It's one of my favorites." And then like also like The Strangers, like the original Strangers with Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman is like that's one of my favorite horror films of all time, and it's so terrifying and this kind of like home invasion kind of component. So it's just kind of like seeing filmmakers really kind of like hone in on these really scary things that could happen. Makes you kind of want to like say, okay, how can I kind of, write something like that too, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah, Strangers just came back again, right? I think there was one just released like less than a year ago. So chapter
like
1 too. So so with Popternative Pictures, you have Adjoining, which is short, and then you also have In Flight, which is a feature film.
Yep. So it's In Flight, and that one's out right now. I came on board as an executive producer after for that one. That has Tiffany Smith and Cristo Fernandez, who plays Danny Rojas in Ted Lasso. He's in that, and that's a clean thriller that's available right now. That is available. It's Bo Youngblood's directorial debut, written by Drew McInerney and John Irardi as well. Who and Bo Youngblood and John Irardi, I'm also working with them on 2 other projects. They have a company called Showdown Productions. So In Flight was the first feature film under that was between Popternative Pictures and Showdown Productions. And that's available now. And then, we have The Cure with Dave Dastmalchian from Late Night with the Devil.
That's another feature.
Ashley Green. Yeah, that's another feature that wrapped production recently. And I just got also back. Dread Central just did first look of our Bigfoot-themed horror thriller Sawtooth Mountain that I'm a producer on as well, starring Sydney Scotia and Landon Liberon from Hemlock Grove and Truth or Dare. So a lot of really exciting things right now. And I know you might be asking this, so just in case you ask this, it's horror movies right now, but I am open to, writing and creating things that are not just horror movies. Because everyone keeps asking me that. Like, is Popternative Pictures just a horror movie company?
Yeah. Well, I also want to know too, like you said, like you're curious about why you made these creative decisions. And I'm curious for you, why make a short like Adjoining? Because sometimes obviously shorts have literally a shorter shelf life, whereas a feature can kind of connect more, and like streamers pick up there's Screenbox, there's all kinds of places where you can put a feature film. Yeah. So, and I mean, worst comes to worst, you could always just dump it onto Tubi, you know what I mean? Like, so, but I'm curious why you would make a short like Adjoining rather than like dedicate your time and your money and effort and all the rest of it to another feature.
No, that's a really good question. I think it's just kind of like, one of those like I'm still kind of starting out in the film production. So the kind of in terms of, something kind of like doing like a feature right away is, a big step, you know what I mean? And like it was kind of one of those opportunities where it just kind of the timing of everything. We had an opportunity to make a really good short horror film. We with some really cool people, and we wrote something really cool, and we just wanted to kind of get it out there. And we said it would really be cool to kind of show what we could do, go to film festivals, and people were asking, about, because it's interesting, right? Short films, you can just make a short film and it's a short film, but then obviously there's a proof of concept, right? Like, can you see this being a feature? And Brenna D'Amico did a press day before our Screenfest premiere. And every journalist asked if Adjoining could be a feature film. So that also comes to play too, right? Like, is it like a proof of concept? Is it just a standalone short? So it's a lot of different things. But I think just at the time, just the opportunity to get in there as a film production company, it was our second film. And then we kind of got involved with the features. So it was kind of one of those, we need to get started. We need to kind of roll out some things. We had this opportunity and we rocked Adjoining, if that makes sense. That answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Because again, circling back to the way what you and I do, I guess, for a quote unquote day job in terms of doing these interviews, you when you've finished an interview, when you have a good sense of it, like, that was a really good connection, or we got some good stories, or whatever it is that whatever criteria you use to judge that this was a good interview, right? Even before you release it and share it with the audience in your community. So it's the same thing with like doing the horror shorts as well. It's like you got to figure out what works, what doesn't work, like what you're comfortable making. Like you got to figure all this stuff out. So you're almost like starting from scratch in a sense, right? Whereas with Popternative, you're a veteran now, right? You kind of know what to do. You know what you're good at.
It's interesting because what I did we had obviously, notes, like different cuts came out of Adjoining, and we all had notes and we went over them, and then a new cut, and then you give notes again, and then you see a new cut, and then you picture lock, and then you get sound and color and everything. And I remember when we had the movie done, like it was done, I did a little kind of like, specific focus group where I showed a few people over Zoom the film, right? And it was kind of one of those, because that's like the scariest thing, right? Because the film's done.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like the cuts where like notes can be changed and everything. That's like the scariest moment, because you're showing people for the first time and it's like it's done. Right. And I showed some journalists, some filmmakers, just a few people, and like the response was like, oh my goodness, like this is crazy. And like it was such a cool feeling to be like, whoa, like before the film festivals, I showed it to people that I trust, and they really kind of enjoyed it and they really loved what we did. And it was exciting that's gonna happen, because that might not happen all the time, you know what I mean? So just kind of like to have a film that people are really enjoying, and people are kind of like having a lot of different questions. Like they're not just coming up to us and being like, wow, this was really cool, congratulations. They're saying, wow, like that dark cinematography, that commentary, like that kind of like first shot, that like bringing in all those and like the effects. Like it's like there's specific kind of comments that people are happening about the film, which is making me really happy.
So we're wrapping up now, but I asked you earlier, like how much of Popternative is based on your taste. And I want to flip the coin, because part of pop culture, unfortunately, is like, I guess hate, for lack of a better term. You watch something and it's not very good, or they made a bad movie. Like these things are just natural, right? So how have you kind of navigated like things that you didn't like, or things that you hate? You know what I mean? Like it's part of the gig where sometimes you get screeners and stuff and you're like, oh, this show does not work at all, right? And then sure enough, it gets canceled after one season. So
Interesting. That's interesting, because you watch a lot of content and some things you like more than others. And I've always been, because I guess just because of the volume of content we, as the media, we watch, right? You kind of watch something and you don't really think about it that much in terms of kind of like, like I don't really think a lot about a lot of that stuff. Like, is it going to get a season 1 or something? You know what I mean? And it depends, like, on the interviews and everything. But it's interesting because I don't know about you, but like I will watch something. Like sometimes things marinate and my opinions on a movie change. So for example, Anatomy of the Fall, which was a big movie for the Oscars last year, right? So that was very interesting because I remember, maybe it was just because it was so much and you have to kind of think about it. But I remember being like, oh, I'm not sure about this one. You know what I mean? And then waking up the next morning and being like, I love this one. You know what I mean? Like thinking about it. And I'm a big thinker about things like that. So it's kind of one of those things where, sometimes it takes me a while. Like sometimes I'll watch something and I'll be like, I didn't connect with it as much. But then I'll like rewatch it and I'll be like, oh, this was awesome. Like I can understand this right now. You know what I mean? So
yeah, and sometimes too, like I get sent stuff because I'm doing the same thing as you, right? Where I'm just interviewing filmmakers and actors and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, this is not quite for me, but I know there's going to be an audience for this, right? Like those Hallmark Christmas movies, right? I don't watch any of them, but there's a massive audience for them. And if those are your jam, enjoy them. Like make the hot chocolate and put on the Snuggie and chill with them. You know what I mean? But I'm like, they sometimes send me like an actor or something, like, no, I can't really do this because that's not really my vibe.
Well, it's the same with music, right? There's like so much music out there. There's some artists that there's some genres that you probably are not as big as a fan of, but you understand the appeal.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So it's like, yeah, and those ones too, when they come into the inbox, are like, oh, I'm sorry, man, like I don't do like heavy death metal, like, but there's lots of people who do, right? And so you kind of give them a couple of names, and you're like,
I love I love some death metal. I love metal. My Spotify rap came out today, right? So it was like,
What's on your list? What's your?
Oh, it was all metal and metalcore and like bands like Ice Nine Kills and Electric Callboy and Brand of Sacrifice, originally from Toronto. A lot of crazy things, and it's interesting too because it's like I love horror movies. Like there's three things I'm a really big fan of, and there's a reason why I love all three of them. It's the same reason. I'm a big, horror movie fan. I'm a big fan of metal music, and I'm a big fan of professional wrestling. Like I'm a big WWE fan. I love that. And every time I partake in those three activities, I feel like I'm on a roller coaster. Like it's the adrenaline rush. Like when I listen to heavy metal music, I feel like there's an adrenaline rush, like I'm on a roller coaster. When I watch a horror film, I feel like I'm literally strapped in on a roller coaster. When I watch professional wrestling, because it's such a spectacle of excess, I feel like it's just an emotional elevator up and down. You know what I mean? So that's kind of why. So I want, like, my dream too is to make like horror movies that have like bring back the Saw soundtracks that have all the metal bands in them. You know what I mean?
That's wow. Yeah. All right.
Did you ever, I used to go buy all the soundtracks for like the Saw movies and like it all had like heavy metal bands on them. It was great.
Yeah.
Remember the Marvel soundtracks had great soundtracks too.
They do. Yeah. And that's the thing too. Like, horror, I find in the last little while, it's kind of just doing like generic soundtracks. There isn't a lot of great soundtracks coming out of horror films in the last little while. Do you know what I mean? So it would be nice to have like a great sounding horror film.
And it's funny too. It's because like, I grew, like we said at the beginning of the interview, like I grew up like a hockey fan and playing all the NHL video games and everything. And like those soundtracks were the best. And some of those soundtracks had metal music in them. You know what I mean? And like metal is doing so many amazing things right now. Gojira performed at the Olympics in Paris. They're a metal band. Knocked Loose and Poppy just performed on the Jimmy Kimmel show. And a lot of people were like, heavy metal hardcore on the Jimmy Kimmel show. That's crazy. So it's like it's kind of getting my creative juices flowing a little, Sammy. Like I want to make something that I want to write something that has a really good heavy metal soundtrack in it.
So we can expect from Popternative Pictures.
Yeah, if that was your question, what can we expect next? To make a horror movie with a heavy metal soundtrack. Okay. Absolutely.
There you go. You're a professional. You already know my questions beforehand, right? So, and that's something we can look forward to. So we can end it there. Thank you, Peter, so much for like hanging out and talking about like heavy metal and horror and like hockey. We covered quite a bit. So
thank you so much for having me on My Summer Lair, Sammy. I really appreciate it. Keep up the great work. You're doing a great job.
Thank you so much. Yo, that was Petey Beats talking about his horror short Adjoining, which screened at Blood in the Snow, and I'm Sammy, host of My Summer Lair. I gotta admit, it's a weird thing to talk about yourself, especially online. I get it. Like, that's the intimacy of a podcast, and sure, we all know on social media there's a lot of, hey guys, going around. But for me, that's not really my jam. I'm super stingy when it comes to biography online and who I am. So I think Petey's kind of getting used to being on the other side of the mic in terms of like talking about himself and who he is. But after doing so many interviews at Popternative, it's got to be a strange feeling still to just like talk about yourself, you know? So I find it funny that after a certain point, Petey just started asking me questions. I appreciate that. Being curious is dope. And it's almost like he couldn't repress his full nature. This is one of the many reasons why he's one of the best in the business. Check out his work at Popternative, especially if you enjoy pop culture. I'm certain you'll be pleased by a number of his interviews. More fun to check out, especially if you dig and enjoy pop culture. My Pal Sammy, a weekly newsletter. Sign up today. Google My Pal Sammy, and that search results link is the wardrobe in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Click on that link, and you'll instantly be transported to a newsletter Narnia, brimming with incredible photos, sweet sarcasm, powerful puns, and all kinds of pop culture reflections and explorations. Sadly, no talking line yet, but I'm working on it. Give me some time. Google My Pal Sammy for my newsletter Narnia, a companion to My Summer Lair. As always, thank you so much for listening to me in a Netflix world. Adjoining, yo.